Okay, Genesis Fallout show. Kind of a good news, bad news situation here. They did some things right, but most of the show was just clouded with this general air of stupidity. And instead of a 20-minute Immortal segment with Bischoff cutting another never-ending promo, they start the show with Ken Anderson. Okay, good. He cuts a promo on being the world champion, how WWE sucks, and how they screwed him over. They get over that Matt Morgan still wants the world title, and they set up Jeff Hardy's rematch. A decent segment. But almost immediately, you could tell there's something wrong. In the Genesis recap video, Anderson said that Jeff Hardy's custom belt is ugly as hell and that it's not the real World Championship title belt. And yet, he comes out to the ring with it. Why is he still carrying that thing around? Dude, throw it in the trash where it belongs and go get the real one. You know where it is. Eric Young's not that tough, Anderson. I think you can take him. What happened next completely exposed how horribly lazy this creative team has become when it comes to following up on important details and making sure storylines stay consistent. For weeks leading up to Genesis, we were constantly hearing how Immortal needed all the titles, how it was absolutely crucial that Dixie's lawyers were like sharks smelling blood in the water, and they needed all the titles because the titles meant power, and if Immortal didn't have all the titles by Genesis, then they were fucked and Dixie's lawyers were just gonna eat Hogan alive. But then they come out of Genesis not having the most important championship in the company, and we don't see any consequences. We don't hear about Hogan facing any legal ramifications for it, and we really don't get the sense that this affects Immortal at all. I mean, hell, all things considered, they seem to be in a pretty good mood. Why was it so important that they have all the titles by Genesis if it was going to be no big deal if they couldn't get the job done? And then to top it all off, Bischoff starts handing out title rematches left and right. The Machine Guns got their rematch immediately, Jay Lethal gets his next week, Doug Williams gets one the week after that, but Jeff Hardy? He has to wait until February 3rd. Now someone please explain that to me. First of all, champions have to defend their titles once a month. So, legally speaking, all these rematches could have been put off until Against All Odds, and it would have been well within the rules. And that would have made perfect sense given the way all this has been written up to this point. With it being so important that Immortal have all the titles in their possession, they would want to avoid title matches in which they could potentially lose those championships at all cost, wouldn't they? But then they start giving title rematches much sooner than they have to, taking chances that they could potentially lose the titles when they don't have to, and Hardy Anderson, the one title rematch that you'd think they'd want to book as soon as possible, what with Dixie's lawyers breathing down their necks, is put off until next month. Why not just do it right now? Weren't these guys under the gun to have all the titles in their faction? And suddenly they don't have the most important one, the one they needed above all others, and for some reason they're in no hurry to get it back? You see what I mean about lazy writing? This is so sloppy, it betrays not even the most basic and rudimentary attention to detail. It's like the writers just slapped together a rough draft of this script in about 20 minutes, never bothered to revise it, and then just handed it off to the wrestlers and were like, here you go. Just disregard all that stuff that doesn't make any sense. Now, all night long, they were really pushing the February 3rd show hard. Not really sure why exactly. February 24th is when they're taking Impact on the road, I believe. But apparently the 3rd is going to be a really important show. Okay, fine. They should hype the hell out of that then. They should save some big matches for it. But saving Anderson Hardy for that show completely goes against the storyline they'd set up. If there was any match they should have saved for February 3rd, it was the main event of this show with the return of the Hardy Boys. But as for Anderson, the only way this storyline would make any sense now is if they were making him defend the world title every single week, giving Hardy every opportunity possible to win it back. But no, that didn't happen, because Immortal decided that legal consequences be damned, they'd rather put it off for a month. These writers are idiots. Okay, positives this week. There was no pointlessness with Team 3D, no Eric Young, no Orlando Jordan. Thank you. The show had a focus, they didn't try to cram too much stuff in, so they weren't pressed for time, and the matches were a little longer than usual. Well, 2 of them were. The tag title match was good, although I am not happy about what they're doing with the Machine Guns right now. The rumor is TNA may be breaking up the Guns and Generation Me so they can beef up the X Division. But they don't focus on the X Division at all anyway. so I don't know what beefing up the roster is going to accomplish. Given the way TNA pushes their tag team division, this is clearly a huge step down for those guys. Plus, why would you spend the last 6 months building up the Guns as the best tag team in the world, and then just break them up when they lose the belts? And if you're taking Jen Me out of there too, that means that the tag team division that you're constantly screaming from the rooftops is the best tag team division in pro wrestling has just been reduced to Beer Money, Inc., and the Hardy Boys. I know London Brawling are expected back at some point, but no one seems to know when Desmond Wolfe is going to be healthy. So really, how does this help you? You say you're doing this to improve the X Division, to make the X Division great again. Guess what? I don't believe it. We've heard that countless times over the last few years, and every single time it has not happened. So, it's nice that Dixie's saying she plans to improve the X Division, but I'll believe it when I see it, not before. Matt Morgan and Abyss had a pretty short match, and Morgan won. That's good. Morgan needed a win. Normally I'd be annoyed that they jobbed out the new champion in his first match, but I don't like Abyss as the TV champ anyway, so I had no problem with this. The Knockouts tag match was really short and not good at all. Tara's still injured, so Madison has to do all the work for her team, which is not a good thing. They tried to build up to Winter getting the hot tag, so most of the match was just Madison versus Angelina, and TNA just does not seem to understand that these two women have no chemistry. Plus, Winter is really not clicking with me. I like her character. Her character is interesting, but she doesn't seem to be getting over, and I'm not feeling it from her in the ring yet. Yeah, she's only had like 60 seconds of ring time total, so that's probably not being fair, but she seems rusty. And if I'm being totally honest, I never thought she was an incredible worker to begin with. She's not bad. She knows what she's doing in there, but there are plenty of women out there that are better than her. And yes, I've seen the OVW ladder match with her and Beth Phoenix. It's overrated. By WWE Diva standards, it was the greatest thing ever, but that's a whole different thing. The Samoa Joe Pope segment was good. The feud has been fine so far, but I really don't know what the point of it is. Both these guys are coming off a bunch of really damaging losses, and they need to be built back up, so I don't know what feuding them against each other is going to do. What's more, the crowd isn't really reacting to it that much yet. I think the problem is that they're really not sure who to cheer for. Joe is the face, but I think people still really want to cheer for the Pope, who seemingly turned heel from out of nowhere for no discernible reason. And they really haven't given us any clear motivation for that yet beyond Joe's vague comments about how the Pope is a phony. Hey, everyone! This guy's a big fat phony! The main event was Anderson and Rob Van Dam versus the reunited Hardy Boys. Don't agree with that. To have Anderson's first match as the world champion be a tag team match just felt wrong to me, and not a good way of spotlighting him whatsoever. Also, the return of the Hardy Boys... I'm sorry, but that is something you save for pay-per-view. And at the very least, if you're going to give it away for free, for Christ's sake, announce it a week in advance. Good God. They did make an effort to hype it up throughout the night at least, but honestly, the match was kind of underwhelming. Wasn't really a bad match or anything, but it didn't feel important like it should, and it really wasn't very exciting at all. Jeff has not been giving a ton of effort in the ring since he turned heel, and Matt's still working his slow-paced WWE ring style, and I'm not interested in watching him if he's going to wrestle like that. Oh, and Matt is now an official member of Immortal, by the way. Because if there's one thing that Immortal desperately needed, it was a 14th member. And that's all I really have to say about iMPACT, but I guess I have to talk about this. TNA is apparently bringing back the Main Event Mafia, or at least some version of it, to fight Immortal. That is fucking ludicrous for so many reasons. The way I heard it was Spike TV kind of pushed for this because the Main Event Mafia storyline was a ratings draw, but even if it was a ratings draw, so what? So the fuck what? Let me explain something to you, Spike TV. The Main Event Mafia got ratings because it was former WCW, WWE old-timers, a group of broken, 10 years past their prime has-beens milking nostalgia pops from a bunch of brain-dead idiots who couldn't let go of their childhood. Every single young guy who feuded with the Main Event Mafia was buried. Every single one. Maybe they made an effort to rebuild AJ and Joe afterward, but those guys never should have been destroyed in the first place. In the year that group existed, how many new stars did they create? None. How many young guys got a rub from working with them? None. Maybe Matt Morgan at the tail end of it, but that never went anywhere afterwards, so the whole thing was pointless. Yeah, the Main Event Mafia storyline got some ratings, but those ratings were a short-term fix, and it was hardly worth it when you compare it to all the damage that was done, because after that group went away and the focus shifted to the young talent, the ratings dropped. The fans didn't see these young guys as stars because over the last year, the writers had hammered into us over and over and over again that the young stars were nothing but worthless jobbers compared to the Main Event Mafia. Now, ever since Dixie took Jarrett and Mantell off the creative team, they've been trying to rectify this. And yes, the writing and booking are really bad most of the time, but at least they've been pushing young stars for the most part. At least they've been doing something that could conceivably benefit the company in the future. What do you think is going to happen if they bring back the Main Event Mafia? All that work goes away. As ineffectively as this Immortal storyline has been booked since it started, at least it's been a faction on top that consists mostly of young stars. But if you have these people plow through the other young talent in the company only to get taken down by Steiner and Sting and whatever other irrelevant fossils you want to throw in there, you just create the same goddamn problem for yourselves that you had before. Steiner's back already. Sting, Nash, and Booker T are question marks right now, but even Steiner by himself is bad enough. What the hell do guys like Kazarian and Beer Money get from feuding with Scott Steiner? If they beat him, so what? They beat up a 50-year-old cripple. But if they job to him, they look like the biggest chumps on earth because they got beat by a 50-year-old cripple! Throw some young guys into the group too, sure, what the hell? It's not going to change anything. Unless he's jobbing to the young talent in every single match, what is the payoff for bringing in a guy like Scott Steiner, who, by all medical logic, should be in traction at this point? TNA, whether this was mandated by Spike TV or not, I don't really care. The failure on your part was in letting it ever reach this point in the first place. If you're resorting to bringing back the Main Event Mafia in any incarnation just to pop the rating, it means this whole Immortal storyline has failed. You failed. End of story.